Quick audiobooks bring the world's best nonfiction books to you, cover to cover. Listen to the complete, unabridged audio versions of life-changing books. Transform your commute, your workouts, or your downtime into your new library. The Clear Mind's Edge, sharpening your judgment in a foggy world. Introduction: Why clarity is a radical act. Look around. The world isn't just complex, it's a master of illusion, and the biggest trick is often played inside your own head. Every day, countless forces, both external and internal, conspire to obscure your judgment. Information overload, social media echo chambers, the relentless drumbeat of advertising, political rhetoric, all these are designed, intentionally or not, to make you think in predictable, often flawed ways. But even without these external pressures, your own brain, that marvel of evolution, is riddled with shortcuts and glitches that lead you astray. We are, by default, not clear thinkers. Our minds are not cold, calculating machines of logic. Instead, they are master storytellers, preferring coherent narratives over cold, hard facts, even if those narratives are pure fiction. Our brains are built for survival in a prehistoric savanna, not for navigating the labyrinthine complexities of modern finance, politics, or personal relationships. The strategies that kept our ancestors alive, instant pattern recognition, tribal loyalty, fear of the unknown, often lead us to make profoundly stupid decisions today. In an age where information is abundant but wisdom is scarce, the ability to think clearly isn't just a nice-to-have skill, it's a radical act. It's an act of rebellion against the constant noise. It's an act of self-preservation against manipulation. It's an act of empowerment, allowing you to see reality with a sharper, more truthful focus. This book is your guide to that radical clarity. What this book is not, it's not a self-help manual filled with warm platitudes and motivational slogans. You won't find fuzzy affirmations here. It's not an academic treatise dense with jargon and footnotes. We'll leave the peer-reviewed journals to the academics. It's not a guarantee that you'll become a perfect thinker. That's impossible. We are all human. What this book is, a direct, unflinching look at the most common cognitive traps that ensnare intelligent people. A concise explanation of why these errors occur, rooted in evolutionary psychology and cognitive science, but presented without pretension. A collection of real-world examples, historical anecdotes, and everyday scenarios that vividly illustrate each pitfall. A blunt instruction on how to sidestep each trap, a practical tool for sharpening your judgment. Think of each chapter as a sharp blade cutting through a different strand of mental cobweb. We'll dismantle the illusions one by one, exposing the mechanisms of self-deception and external influence. We'll examine why you seek out information that confirms what you already believe, why you continue pouring resources into failing ventures, why you fall for compelling stories over dry facts, and why the loudest voices often get mistaken for the wisest. The structure is simple. Each chapter focuses on one specific error and thinking. I will define it, explain its origin, show you where it appears in your life and the lives of others, highlight its dangers, and then offer a clear, actionable takeaway. This isn't about becoming smarter in an abstract sense. It's about becoming less stupid in a very practical sense. It's about minimizing the mistakes that cost you time, money, relationships, and peace of mind. This journey demands a certain level of discomfort. Clarity often does. It means confronting your own susceptibility to error, acknowledging that your intuitive judgments are often flawed, and resisting the powerful pull of your own biases. It means learning to trust cold logic and statistics over gut feelings and compelling narratives. It means accepting that sometimes the world just doesn't make sense, and that's okay. But the reward is profound. The Clear Mind's Edge. It's the ability to pause, question, analyze, and see beyond the surface. It's the capacity to make decisions based on reality, not illusion. It's the power to become a more resilient, less easily manipulated individual. It's about moving from merely reacting to the world's complexities to consciously navigating them with a clearer mind, making fewer costly mistakes, and seeing reality with a sharper focus. So turn the page. The fog is about to lift. End of introduction.
Chapter 1. The Confirmation Trap. Why you see only what you believe. You meet an investment banker at a party. He's radiating confidence, talking animatedly about his latest big bet on a tech startup. It's a sure thing, he insists. All the reports confirm it's going parabolic. I've only seen positive indicators. You ask if he's looked for any dissenting opinions, any reasons why it might not succeed. He dismisses the idea with a wave of his hand. Why would I waste time on negativity? I'm focused on success. A few months later, the startup collapses, taking his investment with it. Have you ever been so convinced of an idea that you only sought out proof, not truth? This isn't just about arrogance. It's about the confirmation trap, one of the most insidious and pervasive cognitive biases. It's the tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. You don't look for evidence, you look for validation. It's not just a bias, it's the king of biases, the mental autopilot that keeps you cruising comfortably down the wrong road. Why do we fall for this trap so readily? Cognitive ease. It's mentally much easier to confirm than to contradict. Our brains are lazy. They prefer consistency and avoid the effort of reevaluating deeply held beliefs. Processing information that supports what we already think feels good. It's like sliding into a warm bath. Ego protection. We like to be right. Contradictory evidence feels like a personal attack on our intelligence, our judgment, or even our identity. Admitting we might be wrong is painful. Information overload. In today's overwhelming sea of data, it's far easier to filter for what fits our narrative than to sift through everything objectively. We pick and choose, often unconsciously. The confirmation trap manifests everywhere, from the trivial to the catastrophic. Politics. Voters exclusively consume news that validates their political party's views. They follow pundits who parrot their opinions, share articles that affirm their biases, and dismiss any contradictory information as fake news. This doesn't just solidify beliefs, it deepens polarization, making nuanced discourse impossible. Scientific research. Even scientists, supposed paragons of objectivity, can fall victim. A researcher might subconsciously design experiments, interpret ambiguous data, or even select which results to publish in a way that confirms their pet theory rather than dispassionately pursuing truth. This is why peer review and replication are so crucial. Hiring decisions. A manager forms an initial positive or negative impression of a job candidate within the first few minutes of an interview. For the rest of the interview, they might unconsciously ask questions or notice behaviors that specifically support that initial impression, ignoring everything that contradicts it. The first impression becomes the confirmed impression. Relationships. Once you've decided your partner is thoughtless, you'll only remember instances where they forgot something, while conveniently forgetting all the times they were considerate. The evidence for your belief is always accumulating, even if it's selectively gathered. Social media echo chambers. This is the confirmation trap turbocharged. Algorithms are designed to show you content that confirms your existing views, creating insular information bubbles. You see what you like what you see, and your beliefs become impermeably reinforced. The danger of the confirmation trap is profound. It doesn't just lead to bad decisions, it makes us overconfident in those bad decisions. By selectively gathering evidence, we build an unshakable belief in our own rightness, even when the facts are screaming otherwise. It prevents learning, adaptation, and any objective assessment of reality. It closes off growth. It condemns you to repeat your mistakes with absolute conviction. The remedy, blunt instruction. Actively seek disconfirming evidence. This is not a suggestion, it's a necessity. Cultivate a devil's advocate mindset, even against your own strongest, most cherished beliefs. Make a list of reasons why you might be wrong. Before making a big decision, consult people you know hold opposing viewpoints and genuinely listen to them, not just to refute them. Go out of your way to find information that challenges your assumptions. If you only look for proof, you'll always find it. Look for flaws instead. That discomfort you feel when encountering a contradictory fact, that's the feeling of your brain learning, growing, and potentially avoiding a catastrophic error. Embrace it. The clear mind's edge, the ability to consciously override the comfort of confirmation bias, daring to challenge your own assumptions, and thus truly learning and adapting to a world that rarely conforms to your expectations. It is the humility to admit you might be wrong, even when every fiber of your being wants to be right. End of Chapter 1, The Confirmation Trap. Chapter 2, The Sunken Cost Trap. Why past losses dictate future failures. Imagine a company that has poured 5 years and millions of dollars into developing a new product. It's plagued with technical issues, market research suggests waning demand, and a competitor has just launched a superior, cheaper alternative. Objectively, the project is a dead end. Yet the CEO insists on throwing more money at it. We can't just abandon it now, he declares. We've already invested so much. All that effort will have been nothing. This is the sunken cost trap in action, a classic error in judgment. It's the irrational tendency to continue an endeavor, or investing in it, because of invested resources, time, money, or effort, that cannot be recovered. Even if continuing is clearly not the best future course of action, it's letting the past dictate a flawed future, clinging to a losing hand because you've already put so many chips into the pot. Why do we fall for this trap so readily? Loss aversion. Abandoning a project, an investment, or even a bad relationship means explicitly admitting a loss. This is emotionally painful. Our brains prefer to postpone pain, even if it means incurring greater losses in the long run. We hope that just a little more effort will somehow redeem the past. Desire for consistency. We want to appear rational, consistent, and decisive. Admitting a mistake or changing course feels like weakness, indecisiveness, or even a public failure. We fear the "I told you so." Hope. Rational belief that just a little more investment will somehow magically turn things around, salvage the previous effort, and justify all the pain. This is akin to a gambler believing their luck is due. The sunken cost trap manifests everywhere, from our personal lives to global conflicts. Leisure and entertainment. You're halfway into a terrible movie or play, you know it's awful, but you stay for the entire 2 hours because I paid for the ticket, I might as well see it through. You're sacrificing 2 hours of your life to justify a past financial decision rather than leaving and salvaging your evening. Relationships. People stay in clearly dysfunctional, unhappy, or even abusive relationships for years because we've been together so long, or we've put so much into this. The past investment blinds them to the increasingly grim reality of the present and future. War. Nations continue fighting clearly unwinnable wars because of the lives and treasure already spent. The cost of admitting defeat and withdrawing feels greater than the cost of ongoing, futile conflict. The Vietnam War is a stark historical example. Education. Students stick with a degree program they hate in a field they have no passion for because they've already completed 2 years. The fear of wasting those 2 years makes them commit to another 2 years of misery rather than pivoting to something more suitable. Entrepreneurship. Founders pouring more money, time, and personal sacrifice into a dying startup, not because the business model is viable, but because they can't give up on their baby after all the blood, sweat, and tears they've already invested. The danger of the sunken cost trap is immense. It blinds us to future opportunities, forces us to compound mistakes, and perpetuates failures simply because we can't let go of the past. It's throwing good money, or time or effort, after bad. It's letting a mistake from yesterday dictate a catastrophe tomorrow. The remedy: blunt instruction. Mentally ignore all past investments. This requires brutal honesty. Before making any decision about continuing a course of action, ask yourself, if I hadn't already put anything into this, no money, no time, no emotional energy, would I start it now? Knowing what I know today, would this be the rational path going forward? If the honest answer is no, cut your losses immediately. Treat past investments as irrelevant, non-recoverable costs. They're gone. Your only concern should be the optimal path from this moment forward. The past is gone. Don't let it bankrupt your future. The pain of realizing a sunk cost is temporary. The pain of compounding a mistake can last a lifetime. The clear mind's edge. The brutal honesty and courage to acknowledge a loss, learn from it, and pivot rather than being dragged down by the weight of past decisions. It's the ability to make decisions solely on their future merits, unburdened by the ghosts of yesterday's investments. End of Chapter 2, The Sunken Cost Trap.
Chapter 3, The Story Trap: Why Good Narratives Outweigh Hard Facts. An eager young entrepreneur stands before a panel of venture capitalists. He doesn't just present data, he weaves a tale. He talks about his humble beginnings, the late nights fueled by ramen, the aha moment that led to his innovative idea, the passion of his small team, and his vision to change the world. The numbers, frankly, are shaky, the market projections ambitious to the point of fantasy, yet the VCs are captivated. They invest. Why? Because the story was irresistible. This is the story trap, or narrative fallacy, in full effect. It's our innate human craving for coherent stories, even when the reality is messy, random, or lacks a clear narrative. We construct stories to make sense of the world, often smoothing over inconsistencies, attributing causality where none exists, and simplifying complexity into a digestible plot, simply because our brains abhor a vacuum of meaning. Why are we so easily swayed by a good story even when the facts don't quite add up? Cognitive ease. Stories are infinitely easier for our brains to process, remember, and understand than raw data, disjointed facts, or statistical probabilities. A narrative gives structure and meaning. Search for meaning. We crave understanding. The world feels chaotic and random, and that's unsettling. Stories impose order, turning random events into causes and effects, making the universe feel more predictable, even if it's a fabricated predictability. Emotional connection. Good stories evoke emotion: hope, fear, inspiration, outrage. Emotion bypasses rational analysis and fosters belief much more powerfully than dry facts ever could. If a story feels true, we often assume it is true. The story trap manifests everywhere, from finance to personal success. Stock market. When a stock price moves, financial pundits immediately concoct elaborate narratives to explain it. The market tanked today because of X political event, or company Y stock soared due to Z analyst's report. In reality, much of the market's daily fluctuation is random noise, but randomness doesn't make for a good story. We desperately seek explanations, even if they're post hoc rationalizations. Biographies and autobiographies. We love heroic narratives. Biographies often simplify complex lives, highlighting struggles and triumphs to create a compelling, linear plot. They downplay luck, external factors, and inconvenient truths that would muddy the clean journey of discovery narrative. The same applies when we tell our own life stories. Marketing and advertising. Brands rarely just sell products. They sell a lifestyle story, an emotional connection, a promise of transformation. You don't buy shoes, you buy the story of athleticism. You don't buy coffee, you buy the story of artisanal craft and connection. The narrative is often far more powerful than the product features. News reporting. Journalists are trained to tell stories. This can sometimes lead to simplifying complex events, overemphasizing dramatic angles, and attributing clear villains and heroes, even when reality is a messy web of factors.
Nuance is often sacrificed for a more engaging story. Personal success. We love to attribute our successes purely to hard work, skill, and grit, creating a rags to riches or talent triumphs narrative. This feels empowering, but often downplays the significant role of luck, privilege, or external factors, leading to an exaggerated sense of control and a distorted view of how success truly works. The danger of the story trap is that it leads us to oversimplify complex situations, misattribute causality, and believe false or incomplete narratives simply because they feel right or are emotionally satisfying. It makes us vulnerable to charismatic leaders, misleading advertising, and our own distorted recollections, preventing us from seeing reality as it truly is. The remedy: blunt instruction. Be relentlessly skeptical of anything that gains traction primarily through repetition and sheer volume of discussion, especially if it evokes strong emotions. Disconnect from information streams that feed constant repetition. Before accepting a widely discussed belief, ask, is this belief gaining strength because it's actually true or because it's loud and frequently repeated? What is the actual statistical evidence? What are the quiet facts that aren't getting media attention? Return to first principles and verify facts independently. Don't mistake volume for truth. The quiet facts are often the most accurate. The mere fact that everyone is talking about something doesn't make it important or true. It just means it's available. The clear mind's edge, the discipline to prioritize unvarnished facts, statistical probabilities, and an acknowledgement of randomness over emotionally satisfying but potentially misleading narratives. It's the strength to resist the seductive pull of a good story in favor of a complicated truth. End of Chapter 3, The Story Trap. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, The Availability Cascade, Why Repeated Lies Become Truth. Recall the sudden media frenzy surrounding a rare medical condition, perhaps a specific food contaminant, or a sensationalized crime wave. Despite the low actual statistical risk, the relentless repetition of these stories on news channels, social media, and water cooler conversations fuels a disproportionate public fear or belief. You find yourself worried about something you logically know is unlikely simply because it's everywhere. This is the availability cascade, and a dangerous extension of the availability heuristic. The availability heuristic states that our brains overestimate the probability of events that are easily recalled or vivid. If you can easily remember examples of something, you assume it happens more often. The availability cascade then kicks in. It's a self-reinforcing cycle where a collective belief, or fear, or idea gains increasing plausibility through its growing public discourse and media repetition, whether or not it has real merit. The more people talk about it, the more we believe it. The more we believe it, the more we talk about it. Why are we so easily swayed by this, even against our better judgment? Cognitive ease. Repeated ideas feel more familiar, and familiar things, our brains intuitively tell us, feel more true. This is the illusion of truth effect. Social proof. If everyone is talking about it, if it's plastered across every headline, it must be important. And if so many people believe it, it must be true. Our fundamental social nature drives us to conform, to align with the perceived consensus. Emotional contagion. Fear, anger, excitement, or moral outrage can rapidly spread through a group or social network, amplifying the cascade. Strong emotions hijack our rational faculties, making us less critical. The availability cascade manifests everywhere, from public opinion to market bubbles. Media sensationalism. News outlets driven by clicks and ratings often prioritize dramatic but statistically rare events, example, a shark attack, a specific type of plane crash, over more common but less sensational dangers, example, car accidents, heart disease. This leads the public to wildly overestimate the risk of the vivid, repeated events. Market hype. A product, brand, or trend gains traction not necessarily because of its inherent quality, but because of relentless advertising and social media chatter. The constant exposure creates an illusion of widespread popularity or importance, making people believe they need it. Political campaigns, political slogans, accusations, or even outright falsehoods, when repeated ad nauseum by campaigns and their media allies, can eventually become perceived as facts in the public consciousness, regardless of evidence. The sheer volume of talk substitutes for actual proof. Conspiracy theories. These thrive on the availability cascade. Within echo chambers and online communities, a theory, no matter how outlandish, gains momentum through endless repetition and discussion. The sheer volume of shared information and enthusiastic belief within the group validates the idea, replacing verifiable evidence. Workplace fads. Management trends, example, synergy, disruption, pivot to video, often sweep through organizations not because of proven efficacy, but because everyone else seems to be adopting them. The repetition in industry publications and conferences creates an illusion of universal acceptance and necessity. The danger of the availability cascade is that it can lead to irrational panic, misallocation of resources, like spending huge sums on a minor, sensationalized threat while ignoring a major, less dramatic one. Profoundly distorted collective beliefs and the normalization of misinformation. It hijacks our collective rationality and steers society in directions often divorced from actual facts or proportionate risk. The remedy. Blunt instruction. Be relentlessly skeptical of anything that gains traction primarily through repetition and sheer volume of discussion, especially if it evokes strong emotions. Disconnect from information streams that feed constant repetition. Before accepting a widely discussed belief, ask, is this belief gaining strength because it's actually true or because it's loud and frequently?
Chapter 3. The Story Trap. Why Good Narratives Outweigh Hard Facts. An eager young entrepreneur stands before a panel of venture capitalists. He doesn't just present data, he weaves a tale. He talks about his humble beginnings, the late nights fueled by ramen, the aha moment that led to his innovative idea, the passion of his small team, and his vision to change the world. The numbers, frankly, are shaky. The market projections ambitious to the point of fantasy. Yet the VCs are captivated. They invest. Why? Because the story was irresistible. This is the story trap, or narrative fallacy, in full effect. It's our innate human craving for coherent stories, even when the reality is messy, random, or lacks a clear narrative. We construct stories to make sense of the world, often smoothing over inconsistencies, attributing causality where none exists, and simplifying complexity into a digestible plot, simply because our brains abhor a vacuum of meaning. Why are we so easily swayed by a good story, even when the facts don't quite add up? Cognitive ease. Stories are infinitely easier for our brains to process, remember, and understand than raw data, disjointed facts, or statistical probabilities. A narrative gives structure and meaning. Search for meaning. We crave understanding. The world feels chaotic and random, and that's unsettling. Stories impose order, turning random events into causes and effects, making the universe feel more predictable, even if it's a fabricated predictability. Emotional connection. Good stories evoke emotion, hope, fear, inspiration, outrage. Emotion bypasses rational analysis and fosters belief much more powerfully than dry facts ever could. If a story feels true, we often assume it is true. The story trap manifests everywhere, from finance to personal success. Stock market. When a stock price moves, financial pundits immediately concoct elaborate narratives to explain it. The market tanked today because of X political event, or company-wise stocks soared due to Z analyst's report. In reality, much of the market's daily fluctuation is random noise, but randomness doesn't make for a good story. We desperately seek explanations even if they're post hoc rationalizations. Biographies and autobiographies. We love heroic narratives. Biographies often simplify complex lives, highlighting struggles and triumphs to create a compelling, linear plot. They downplay luck, external factors, and inconvenient truths that would muddy the clean journey of discovery narrative. The same applies when we tell our own life stories. Marketing and advertising. Brands rarely just sell products. They sell a lifestyle story, an emotional connection, a promise of transformation. You don't buy shoes. You buy the story of athleticism. You don't buy coffee. You buy the story of artisanal craft and connection. The narrative is often far more powerful than the product features. News reporting. Journalists are trained to tell stories. This can sometimes lead to simplifying complex events, overemphasizing dramatic angles and attributing clear villains and heroes, even when reality is a messy web of factors. Nuance is often sacrificed for a more engaging story. Personal success. We love to attribute our successes purely to hard work, skill, and grit, creating a rags to riches or talent triumphs narrative. This feels empowering, but often downplays the significant role of luck, privilege, or external factors, leading to an exaggerated sense of control and a distorted view of how success truly works. The danger of the story trap is that it leads us to oversimplify complex situations, misattribute causality, and believe false or incomplete narratives simply because they feel right or are emotionally satisfying. It makes us vulnerable to charismatic leaders, misleading advertising, and our own distorted recollections, preventing us from seeing reality as it is. The remedy: blunt instruction. Be relentlessly skeptical of compelling narratives, especially those that are too neat, too simple, or too emotional. When confronted with a powerful story, deliberately deconstruct it into its constituent facts. Ask, what information has been left out to make the story so tidy? What alternative explanations exist? Could this simply be due to randomness or a combination of unrelated factors? Seek out raw data even if it's boring. Embrace complexity and acknowledge the role of chance. A good story feels true, but truth often isn't a good story. Reality is frequently messy, illogical, and unsatisfyingly random. Your willingness to accept that messiness is a mark of a clear mind. The clear mind's edge is the discipline to prioritize unvarnished facts, statistical probabilities, and an acknowledgement of randomness over emotionally satisfying but potentially misleading narratives. It's the strength to resist the seductive pull of a good story in favor of a complicated truth. End of Chapter 3. The Story Trap. Chapter 4. The Availability Cascade. Why Repeated Lies Become Truth. Recall the sudden media frenzy surrounding a rare medical condition, perhaps a specific food contaminant, or a sensationalized crime wave. Despite the low actual statistical risk, the relentless repetition of these stories on news channels, social media, and water cooler conversations fuels a disproportionate public fear or belief. You find yourself worried about something you logically know is unlikely simply because it's everywhere. This is the availability cascade, a dangerous extension of the availability heuristic. The availability heuristic states that our brains overestimate the probability of events that are easily recalled or vivid. If you can easily remember examples of something, you assume it happens more often. The availability cascade then kicks in. It's a self-reinforcing cycle where a collective belief, or fear, or idea gains increasing plausibility through its growing public discourse and media repetition, whether or not it has real merit. The more people talk about it, the more we believe it. The more we believe it, the more we talk about it. Why do we fall for this, even against our better judgment? Cognitive ease. Repeated ideas feel more familiar, and familiar things our brains intuitively tell us feel more true. This is the illusion of truth effect. Social proof. If everyone is talking about it, if it's plastered across every headline, it must be important.
And if so many people believe it, it must be true. Our fundamental social nature drives us to conform, to align with the perceived consensus. Emotional contagion, fear, anger, excitement, or moral outrage can spread rapidly through a group or social network, amplifying the cascade. Strong emotions hijack our rational faculties, making us less critical. The availability cascade manifests everywhere, from public opinion to market bubbles. Media sensationalism. News outlets driven by clicks and ratings often prioritize dramatic but statistically rare events, like a shark attack or a specific type of plane crash, over more common but less sensational dangers, like car accidents or heart disease. This leads the public to wildly overestimate the risk of the vivid, repeated events. Marketing hype. A product, brand, or trend gains traction not necessarily because of its inherent quality, but because of relentless advertising and social media chatter. The constant exposure creates an illusion of widespread popularity or importance, making people believe they need it. Political campaigns. Political slogans, accusations, or even outright falsehoods, when repeated ad nauseum by campaigns and their media allies, can eventually become perceived as facts in the public consciousness, regardless of evidence. The sheer volume of talk substitutes for actual proof. Conspiracy theories. These thrive on the availability cascade. Within echo chambers and online communities, a theory, no matter how outlandish, gains momentum through endless repetition and discussion. The sheer volume of shared information and enthusiastic belief within the group validates the idea, replacing verifiable evidence. Workplace fads. Management trends like synergy, disruption, pivot to video often sweep through organizations not because of proven efficacy, but because everyone else seems to be adopting them. The repetition in industry publications and conferences creates an illusion of universal acceptance and necessity. The danger of the availability cascade is that it can lead to irrational public panic, misallocation of resources, and profoundly distorted collective beliefs, and the normalization of misinformation. It hijacks our collective rationality and steers society in directions often divorced from actual facts or proportionate risk. The remedy: blunt instruction. Cultivate radical skepticism towards anything that gains traction primarily through repetition and sheer volume of discussion, especially if it evokes strong emotions. Disconnect from information streams that feed constant repetition. Before accepting a widely discussed belief, ask, is this belief gaining strength because it's actually true or because it's loud and frequently repeated? What is the actual statistical evidence? What are the quiet facts that aren't getting media attention? Return to first principles and verify facts independently. Don't mistake volume for truth. The quiet facts are often the most accurate. The mere fact that everyone is talking about something doesn't make it important or true. It just means it's available. The clear mind's edge, the courage to detach from the roar of the crowd, to resist the magnetic pull of popular opinion, and to seek independent, verifiable truth even when it's less dramatic, less emotional, and less widely discussed. It's the strength to hold your ground against the tide of collective belief. End of Chapter 4. The Availability Cascade.
Chapter 5. The Overconfidence Illusion. Why you know less than you think. You're about to start a new business venture. You've crunched the numbers, developed a brilliant product, and you're absolutely convinced it will be a runaway success. When asked about potential pitfalls, you shrug. We've thought of everything, you declare. Or perhaps you're driving, convinced you're a better-than-average driver, even though statistically, half of all drivers must be below average. This, my friend, is the overconfidence illusion, a pervasive and dangerous bias that blinds us to our own limitations. The overconfidence illusion is the tendency for people to overestimate their abilities, knowledge, and the accuracy of their predictions. It's not just a subtle bias. It's often massive, even in domains where we have expertise. We consistently believe we know more than we do, are more skilled than we are, and are more likely to succeed than objective probabilities suggest. Why do we fall for this, even when evidence suggests otherwise? Cognitive ease and ego protection. It feels good to be confident. Admitting uncertainty or ignorance is uncomfortable and can feel like a blow to our self-esteem. Our brains prefer the narrative of competence. Lack of feedback. Often, we don't receive clear, immediate, and unambiguous feedback on the accuracy of our predictions. Or, when we do, we explain away failures. Confirmation trap at play. Control illusion. We want to believe we are in control of outcomes, even when a randomness plays a significant role. Overconfidence is a coping mechanism against an unpredictable world. Illusion of knowledge. The more information we gather, even if it's biased or incomplete, the more confident we feel, even if the accuracy of our predictions doesn't actually improve. The overconfidence illusion manifests across every domain of human endeavor. Business and entrepreneurship. A staggering number of new businesses fail, yet almost all founders are highly confident their venture will succeed. They overestimate market demand, underestimate competition, and ignore potential obstacles. They bet the farm on rosy projections. Medicine. Doctors are often overconfident in their diagnoses, especially when dealing with ambiguous symptoms. This isn't due to malice, but human fallibility. The very nature of expertise can breed overconfidence. Investing. Investors, both amateur and professional, routinely believe they can beat the market. They trade too frequently, convinced their insights are superior, leading to worse returns after fees. The market's random walk is humbling, but overconfidence prevents us from accepting it. Personal skills. Ask people if they are above-average drivers, or more intelligent than average, or better-looking than average. In most surveys, a significant majority, often 70 to 90%, will claim to be above average, which is a mathematical impossibility. This is the better-than-average effect. Planning projects. We consistently underestimate how long tasks will take or how much they will cost. From software development to home renovations, projects run late and over budget because of overconfident forecasts. This is known as the planning fallacy. The danger of the overconfidence illusion is that it leads to reckless decisions, missed opportunities for learning, and a profound misjudgment of risk. It makes us less likely to prepare for contingencies, less likely to seek out dissenting opinions, confirmation trap again, and less likely to critically evaluate our own plans. It's a silent killer of good judgment. The remedy: blunt instruction. Cultivate a mindset of radical humility about your own knowledge and predictive abilities. Whenever you feel supremely confident, pause. Ask yourself, what evidence could prove me wrong? What are the top 3 reasons this could fail? Who disagrees with me and why? Actively seek out perspectives that challenge your certainty. Instead of giving point estimates, use ranges for predictions, e.g., this project will take between 6 and 10 months, instead of 6 months. Consider the base rates. What's the typical failure rate for ventures like yours? You know less than you think. Embrace that uncertainty. It is the beginning of wisdom and the path to better decisions. Your confidence is a feeling, not a fact. The clear mind's edge. The wisdom to acknowledge the vastness of your own ignorance, the humility to constantly question your certainty, and the discipline to prepare for outcomes you'd rather not imagine. It is the understanding that true competence includes an awareness of its own limits. End of Chapter 5. The Overconfidence Illusion. Chapter 6. the scarcity error, why rare is not always valuable. A limited edition sneaker drops online. Within minutes, it's sold out, fetching exorbitant prices on resale markets. Are these sneakers inherently superior? Do they offer unparalleled comfort or revolutionary design? Often, no. Their perceived value stems almost entirely from their scarcity. Or consider an exclusive offer that expires tomorrow. Suddenly, a mundane product becomes intensely desirable. This is the scarcity error, a mental shortcut that equates rarity with value. The scarcity error is the psychological bias where we value things more highly when they are scarce or difficult to obtain, even if their objective utility or quality hasn't changed. It taps into our fear of missing out, or FOMO, and our instinctual drive to acquire what others might want. Why does scarcity exert such a powerful pull on our judgment? Evolutionary roots. In an ancestral environment, scarce resources, food, shelter, were genuinely valuable for survival. Our brains evolved to prioritize acquiring things that were limited. Loss aversion. The potential loss of an opportunity to acquire something scarce feels more potent than the potential gain of acquiring something abundant. The thought of missing out is painful. Social proof and competition. If something is scarce, it implies others must also want it. This triggers a competitive instinct and acts as a form of social proof. If it's in high demand, it must be good. Freedom restriction. When an item becomes scarce, our freedom to acquire it is restricted. We react strongly to this perceived loss of freedom, desiring the item even more. The scarcity error manifests across countless scenarios from commerce to social influence, marketing and sales, limited time offers, creating artificial urgency, offer expires tonight, or only X left in stock, displaying dwindling inventory to trigger impulse purchases, or exclusive access, offering early access or membership to a select few, making the offering seem more desirable. Rare collectibles, the entire market for unique or limited edition items where value is often divorced from intrinsic utility. Relationships, the hard-to-get phenomenon, where a person who seems less available is often perceived as more desirable. Information, secret knowledge or insider tips feel more valuable simply because they are not widely available, regardless of their actual accuracy or utility. Politics, campaigns framing access to a candidate or an exclusive event as a scarce, valuable privilege. Art and antiques, the value of a painting or an antique can skyrocket simply because it's the last known or only one. The danger of the scarcity error is that it distorts our perception of true value. It leads us to make irrational purchases, to prioritize acquiring things simply because they are scarce, rather than because they genuinely meet our needs or contribute to our well-being. We end up with things we don't need, regret impulsive decisions, and spend money unwisely, all because we were tricked by a perceived lack. The remedy, the blunt instruction: whenever you feel an intense urge to acquire something because it's limited, exclusive, or about to expire, pause. Deliberately ignore the scarcity signal. Ask yourself, would I want this just as much if it were abundant? Would I pay this price if it were available forever? Am I buying this because I genuinely need or want it, or because I fear missing out? Detach the concept of rarity from the concept of value. Most truly valuable things, health, good relationships, clean air, knowledge, are thankfully not scarce. Rare is not always valuable. Sometimes it's just rare. Don't let a trick of psychology empty your wallet or dictate your priorities. The clear mind's edge, the discipline to critically evaluate an item's intrinsic value, unswayed by the manufactured urgency of scarcity. It's the ability to distinguish between genuine need and the fear of missing out. End of Chapter 6, The Scarcity Error.
Chapter 7, The Reciprocity Rule. Why Unwanted Favors Cost You. The Flower Giver Anecdote. Start with the famous Hare Krishna example. Giving an unexpected gift, a flower or book, to a stranger, followed by a request for a donation. Many felt obligated to give, even if they didn't want the gift. Have you ever felt compelled to say yes after someone did you a small favor, even if you never asked for it? Reciprocity rule defined. This is a fundamental human social norm. If someone does something for you, you feel an obligation to return the favor. This powerful, often unconscious drive ensures cooperation and mutual aid in society, but it can be easily exploited. Why we fall for it. Social harmony. Rejecting a favor or failing to reciprocate creates social tension and risks being seen as ungrateful or selfish. Our brains are wired to avoid this. Evolutionary benefit. In our ancestral past, those who reciprocated thrived through mutual support. This instinct is deeply ingrained. Unconscious compulsion. The feeling of obligation can be almost visceral, an automatic System 1 response overriding rational assessment. The reciprocity rule manifests in countless interactions, often subtly. Sales and marketing. Free samples. Giving away a small free sample creates an obligation to buy the product. Free trial offers. While genuinely beneficial, they also create a subtle obligation. Unsolicited gifts. Charities sending small, unwanted gifts, address labels, greeting cards, with donation requests. Recipients often feel obligated to donate more than the gift's value. Negotiation. Concessions. If a salesperson makes a concession, like lowering a price, we feel compelled to reciprocate with a concession of our own, like buying the product, even if we weren't fully satisfied. This is the door-in-the-face technique, where an extreme initial request is followed by a more reasonable one, making the second request seem like a concession you must reciprocate. Social and professional networking. The unspoken expectation that if someone helps you with a job lead or an introduction, you'll eventually return the favor. Politics. Lobbyists making donations or offering favors to politicians, creating an unspoken expectation of future consideration. Family and friends. While essential for healthy relationships, the reciprocity rule can also lead to giving more than you can afford or doing things you don't truly want to do out of a sense of obligation. The danger of the reciprocity rule is that it can lead us to make decisions, spend money, or commit time that we otherwise wouldn't, simply because we feel obligated by an unsolicited favor. It's a powerful tool for manipulation, turning generosity into a debt trap. The remedy: blunt instruction. Learn to distinguish between genuine goodwill and manipulative tactics. When someone offers an unsolicited favor or gift, pause. Ask yourself, did I ask for this? Do I truly want this? Am I feeling obligated right now, or is this a genuine desire to reciprocate? If it feels like a manipulative setup, politely refuse the initial favor. If you do accept, acknowledge the favor, but consciously decide if and how you wish to reciprocate, rather than being compelled by an automatic response. You are not a vending machine for favors. Unwanted favors can be a high price to pay. Don't let someone else's generosity obligate you to act against your own interests. The clear mind's edge is the ability to recognize the subtle manipulation inherent in unsolicited favors, and the courage to refuse the feeling of obligation when it's not freely given. It's about consciously choosing when and how to reciprocate, maintaining your autonomy in social exchanges. End of Chapter 7, The Reciprocity Rule.
Chapter 8, The Authority Bias. Why You Obey Without Question. The phone rings. A stranger on the other end, identifying themselves as a Dr. Smith, instructs a nurse to administer a dangerously high dose of an unapproved drug to a patient. Despite her own reservations and the clear breach of protocol, the nurse complies. This chilling scenario, replicated in actual psychological experiments like Hoffling's study, demonstrates the terrifying power of the authority bias, our deep-seated tendency to obey figures of authority even when their commands contradict our better judgment or ethical code. The authority bias is the propensity to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, unrelated to its content, and be more influenced by that opinion. We tend to obey instructions from authority figures, even if they are questionable, because we assume they know better or because we fear consequences for disobedience. Why is this bias so deeply ingrained? Evolutionary roots. In complex social structures, obeying designated leaders or elders was often beneficial for group survival. It brought order, efficiency, and safety. Cognitive ease. It's mentally easier to defer to an authority figure than to critically evaluate their commands or question their expertise. It offloads the burden of responsibility. Fear of consequences. Disobeying authority can lead to punishment, social ostracization, or professional repercussions. The cost of disobedience can feel higher than the cost of blind compliance. Implicit trust. We're conditioned from a young age to respect and trust figures of authority: parents, teachers, doctors, police. This trust extends, often unquestioningly, into adulthood. The authority bias manifests everywhere, often with significant consequences. Medicine. Patients often fail to question doctors' orders even when they have concerns or believe a mistake is being made. Nurses might comply with dangerous instructions, as in the Hoffling study, or pilots might continue to fly with faulty equipment if a senior captain insists. In military and law enforcement, soldiers or officers might carry out unethical or illegal orders if given by a superior, citing just following orders. The infamous Milgram experiment demonstrated how ordinary people would administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks if instructed by an authority figure in a lab coat. Finance and investing. Investors might blindly follow the advice of a guru or a charismatic CEO without doing their own due diligence, simply because the person projects an aura of authority, regardless of their actual competence or moral standing. Workplace. Employees often hesitate to challenge a decision made by a senior manager, even if they know it's flawed, for fear of appearing disrespectful or insubordinate. This can lead to disastrous groupthink. Advertising. Endorsing products with expert testimonials, like 9 out of 10 dentists recommend, relies on the authority bias, even if the expert has no real expertise in the specific product. The danger of the authority bias is that it suppresses critical thinking, encourages blind obedience, and can lead to catastrophic errors, ethical breaches, and the perpetuation of flawed ideas. It makes us vulnerable to manipulation by those who merely project authority, regardless of their actual competence or moral standing.
Chapter 9. The action bias. Why doing something is not always better than doing nothing. A penalty shootout in football. The goalkeeper faces a shot. Statistically, the best strategy is often to stay in the center, as around a third of shots go there. Yet, goalies almost always dive left or right. Why? Because diving, even if it's the wrong way, feels better than standing still and watching the ball sail past. This is the action bias, the urge to do something, anything, even if inaction is the more rational or beneficial choice. The action bias is the tendency to prefer action over inaction, even when doing nothing is objectively the better course of action. It's born from a deep-seated human discomfort with passivity, especially when faced with uncertainty or a perceived threat. Why do we fall for this active trap? Evolutionary pressure. In many ancestral scenarios, acting, fleeing, fighting, gathering was almost always better than doing nothing when faced with danger. Better safe than sorry often meant better act than die. Social expectations. In modern society, we often value action, initiative, and decisiveness. Inaction can be perceived as laziness, incompetence, or cowardice, especially in leadership roles. Control illusion.
Taking action, even if ineffective, gives us a sense of control over a situation, reducing the anxiety of uncertainty. Regret aversion. We often regret inaction more than action, even if the action leads to a worse outcome. At least I tried is a powerful emotional bomb. The action bias manifests across various fields, business and management. Faced with a crisis or falling profits, managers often feel compelled to implement new strategies, launch initiatives, or restructure the company, even if the optimal strategy would be to analyze, wait, or simply cut costs. We must do something. Medicine. Doctors, fearing charges of neglect or feeling pressure from patients, might order unnecessary tests or prescribe treatments that offer little benefit, simply because doing something feels more responsible than doing nothing. This contributes to overtreatment. Investing. Many investors feel compelled to constantly buy and sell stocks or to react to market news, even though studies repeatedly show that a buy and hold strategy with minimal intervention often yields better long-term results. Trading creates the illusion of control. Sports. Beyond penalty shootouts, coaches might make unnecessary substitutions or tactical changes when their team is struggling, even if it disrupts rhythm, simply because they feel pressure to do something. Emergency services. First responders feeling compelled to take heroic, risky actions, even when waiting for backup or a safer approach would lead to a better outcome. The danger of the action bias is that it leads to wasted resources, unnecessary risks, counterproductive interventions, and a failure to recognize that sometimes the most effective strategy is patience, observation, or strategic withdrawal. It fuels busy work over genuine progress. The remedy? Blunt instruction. Whenever you feel an overwhelming urge to do something in a situation, especially when faced with uncertainty or pressure, pause. Force yourself to consider the option of doing nothing. Ask, what are the potential costs of this action? What are the potential benefits of inaction? Could this action make things worse or simply create the illusion of progress? What happens if I just wait and observe for 24 hours? Cultivate the courage to be patient, to observe, and to resist the pressure to perform action theater. Sometimes the best move is no move at all. Doing something is not always better than doing nothing. Often it's significantly worse. True wisdom lies in knowing when to act and when to calmly stand your ground. The clear mind's edge, the discipline to resist the compulsive urge to act, especially under pressure or uncertainty. It's the profound understanding that strategic patience and thoughtful inaction are often the most effective and courageous responses.
Chapter 10. The Clarity Habit. Your shield against a foggy world. We've dissected 9 distinct errors in thinking, from the self-deceiving comfort of the confirmation trap to the impulsive folly of the action bias. You've seen how your own brain, a magnificent but flawed instrument, regularly leads you astray, and how external forces exploit these weaknesses. You've glimpsed the pervasive fog that obscures rational judgment in almost every aspect of life. So what now? Will merely knowing about these biases make them disappear? Of course not. Awareness is only the first step. Thinking clearly is not a destination. It's a relentless, lifelong practice. It's a habit you must cultivate, a shield you must actively maintain against a world constantly trying to manipulate your thoughts. Let's recap the core errors we've explored and their corresponding defenses, forming the bedrock of the clarity habit. The confirmation trap. You see only what you believe. Defense. Actively seek disconfirming evidence. Cultivate a devil's advocate mindset. The sunk cost trap. Past losses dictate future failures. Defense. Ignore past investments. Ask, would I start this now? The story trap. Good narratives outweigh hard facts. Defense.
Deconstruct narratives into raw facts. Embrace complexity and randomness. The availability cascade. Repeated lies become truth. Defense. Cultivate radical skepticism towards repetition. Seek independent verification. The overconfidence illusion. You know less than you think. Defense. Cultivate radical humility. Always ask, what could prove me wrong? The scarcity error. Rare is not always valuable. Defense. Ignore scarcity signals. Evaluate intrinsic value independently. The reciprocity rule. Unwanted favors cost you. Defense. Distinguish genuine goodwill from manipulation. Consciously choose to reciprocate. The authority bias. You obey without question. Defense. Question authority always. Seek independent evidence. The action bias. Doing something is not always better than doing nothing. Defense. Pause. Consider strategic inaction. Ask, could doing nothing be better? This isn't an exhaustive list of all cognitive biases. Academics have identified hundreds, but these 9 represent some of the most common, most dangerous, and most easily recognizable traps that derail intelligent thinking. Mastering these defenses will give you a significant edge. Cultivating the clarity habit. Thinking clearly is not a natural state. It requires conscious effort and consistent practice. The power of journaling or decision logs. Keep a log of significant decisions. Note your initial hypothesis, the evidence you considered, your confidence level, and the eventual outcome. Reflecting on these will provide invaluable feedback, helping you spot your own patterns of bias. It's a painful but necessary practice for self-correction. The second opinion rule. For crucial decisions, force yourself to seek a second opinion from someone with a different perspective or no vested interest. This combats confirmation bias and authority bias. Embrace discomfort. The feeling of unease when your beliefs are challenged or when you're forced to admit a mistake is a signal of growth. Don't avoid it, lean into it. Clarity often feels uncomfortable initially. Think in probabilities, not certainties. The world is rarely black and white. Avoid definitive statements and embrace nuance. Ask, what's the likelihood of this outcome? Rather than, is this certain? Be a negative seeker. When evaluating an idea, product, or plan, deliberately search for the flaws, the weaknesses, the reasons why it won't work, rather than just the positives. This is a direct antidote to confirmation bias and overconfidence. Minimize distractions. Clear thinking requires focus. In an age of constant pings and notifications, consciously create environments where your mind can operate without constant interruptions. Read widely and skeptically. Consume information from diverse sources, especially those that challenge your worldview, but always read skeptically, asking, what bias might this author or source have? What agenda might be at play? The stakes are high. In a world increasingly polarized by biased information, swayed by emotional narratives, and driven by short-term thinking, the ability to think clearly is more vital than ever. It's your personal shield against manipulation, your compass in a storm of misinformation, and your greatest tool for making choices that truly serve your long-term interests and values. This isn't about becoming a cold, emotionless robot. It's about empowering your rational mind to work with your emotions, to guide them rather than being enslaved by them. It's about seeing the world with an unvarnished honesty that allows for genuine understanding, effective action, and ultimately, a more fulfilling life. The gentle revolution of clarity. The insights in this book are not new. Many of these biases have been documented for decades, even centuries. What is new, however, is the urgency. As the world becomes more interconnected, faster, and more complex, the cost of muddled thinking skyrockets. Your personal and professional success, your financial well-being, your health, your relationships, all hinge on your ability to navigate this fog. By practicing the clarity habit, you are not just improving your own life, you are contributing to a more rational, more resilient society. One clear mind at a time, we can begin to cut through the noise. The clear mind's edge is not a magic bullet, it's a toolbox. But with these tools and the discipline to use them, you gain a profound advantage. You gain the ability to see things as they truly are, to make less mistakes, and to live with greater intention and wisdom. Go forth, think clearly, the world needs it. End of Chapter 10. The Clarity Habit.